Once upon a time, in a magical tortoise realm, there lived a curious and adventurous tortoise named Timothy. Timothy had always dreamt of attending the grandest feast in the sky, hosted by the majestic birds of the avian kingdom. Driven by his desire to experience something extraordinary, Timothy hatched a daring plan. He approached the exotic birds that cannot fly and kindly requested to borrow their colourful feathers so he could blend in and join the celestial celebration. And surprisingly, the birds agreed, intrigued by Timothy's audacity. With his borrowed plumage, Timothy transformed into a magnificent creature, his shell hidden beneath a vibrant tapestry of feathers. He soared high into the sky, carried by the wind, and entered the grand feast with a sense of awe and wonder. But as the feast progressed, the birds began to realize that Timothy was not one of their own. Whispers spread through the crowd, and soon the truth was unveiled. Angered by the tortoise's deception, the birds pulled his feathers and banished him from their sky kingdom. Timothy, now stripped of his borrowed feathers, plummeted towards the earth below. Fear gripped his heart as he fell, and upon landing, his shell cracked, leaving him with a broken back. Lying there, vulnerable and in pain, Timothy felt regret for his foolish actions. However, amidst his suffering, he discovered a newfound humility and a deep appreciation for his own unique identity. News of Timothy's misfortune reached the birds, and with it came a pang of guilt. They realized their harsh judgment had caused the tortoise great harm. Determined to make amends, the birds descended from the heavens and surrounded Timothy with their wings, forming a protective circle. United in compassion, the birds lifted Timothy into the sky, each one lending their strength to help fly him up. Slowly but surely, they carried him back to his home, where his family treated him. As Timothy's broken back healed, it formed a new natural armor. The bird's act of kindness had not only restored his physical strength, but also bestowed upon him an ethereal beauty that was uniquely his own, causing him to appreciate himself even more. From that day forward, Timothy became a symbol of self-love and forgiveness. The birds and the tortoise realized that their differences were not barriers, but rather opportunities for understanding and growth. And so, the tortoise who once sought to borrow exotic feathers to attend a grand feast in the sky learned that his true beauty lay not in imitation, but in embracing his authentic self. Together, the birds and Timothy celebrated their newfound friendship, forever cherishing the lesson that acceptance and forgiveness can mend even the deepest wounds. Once upon a time, there was a clever tortoise named Timothy. He lived in a beautiful forest, surrounded by his bird friends. Timothy had once played a mischievous trick on his bird friends, pretending to be a bird at a birds-only feast in the sky. The creep of tortoises already had their feast. At first, he succeeded at fooling them, and they punished him as soon as they found out, but when the birds discovered the gravity of the injury he had sustained, they each had mercy and forgave him. Some time later, all the forest creatures were invited to a grand feast in the sky, for the birds were very kind and generous. It was a special occasion for male only, and everyone was excited, especially Timothy. He couldn't resist the temptation to trick his bird friends once again. When the waiter came to collect the names of all the guests, Timothy slyly told him, "My name is all of you." As the feast began, different waiters brought out delicious meals, refreshing drinks, and mouth-watering desserts. With each arrival, each waiter would exclaim, "This is for all of you," meaning for every guest, but the server who had taken their names would serve them to Timothy because he had originally claimed his name was all of you. Timothy would greedily take the food and drink as his own, munching and slurping away, while his bird friends and the others looked on with disappointment. As he selfishly devoured everything, his bird friends grew angrier and angrier. They felt betrayed by his deceitful behavior, and their friendship with Timothy began to fade away. In their hearts, they knew they had to do something to teach Timothy a final lesson. The bird friends decided to collect the feathers they had once lent Timothy so he could fly up to the feast. With their feathers back, Timothy was unable to return home. He found himself stranded in the sky, feeling more alone than ever before. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Timothy felt remorseful and desperate to make amends. He approached Mr. Crow, one of his former friends, and begged him. He said, "I have no choice than to jump onto the ground, but please go tell my lovely wife Marie to lay a soft mattress for me to jump onto when I land home." Mr. Crow agreed to help Timothy. But instead of delivering the message accurately, he went to Marie and told her that everyone is heading home because a bad hurricane had ended the feast and is headed towards the forest, and that Timothy wanted her to lay out rocks around their house to prevent heavy flooding from damaging their home. Timothy's wife, who still cared for him, followed Mr. Crow's instructions and placed the rocks as she was told. When Mr. Crow returned to Timothy and shared the news, he was overjoyed. He sighted his house from way up in the sky, hopped as high as he could, and prepared to jump. However, as he descended from the sky, he landed on the hard rocks that his wife had mistakenly laid out and cracked his back. The impact was painful, and Timothy realized the consequences of his selfish actions. He understood that his greed had cost him the love and trust of his bird friends. From that day forward, Timothy vowed to be kind and considerate to others, never again taking advantage of their generosity. And so, with a newfound understanding and a humbled heart, Timothy embarked on a journey to rebuild the friendships he had lost. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to make amends and become a better version of himself. And that, my little friends, is the story of Timothy the tortoise, who learned that selfishness can drive away the ones we hold dear.
Once upon a time, in a peaceful forest, lived a cunning tortoise named Timothy. All the animals in the forest sometimes seek his wisdom and advice. However, during a harsh famine, Timothy's wisdom took a mischievous turn. The forest was running out of food, and everyone was feeling hungry and weak. Timothy, being clever, came up with a plan to save the remaining grains. He gathered all the animals and said, "Dear friends, if we want to survive this famine, we must save every grain we have left. Let's store them in a barn and seal our mouths with glue so that we won't be tempted to eat them." The animals trusted Timothy's wisdom and agreed to follow his plan. They saved all the grains they had and sealed their mouths with glue, believing it was for the best. But little did they know, Timothy had a mischievous secret. While the other animals struggled with their hunger, Timothy secretly used jelly instead of glue to seal his mouth. At night, when everyone was asleep, he would sneak into the barn, cook the grains, and feast on them. He enjoyed delicious meals while the other animals grew skinnier and weaker. As time passed, Timothy's belly grew round, and his shell shone with health, while the other animals looked thin and frail. They became curious and suspicious of Timothy's well-being. They decided to keep a close watch on him to uncover his secret. One moonlit night, the animals quietly followed Timothy to the barn. They hid behind the trees, peeking at what he was up to. To their astonishment, they saw Timothy entering the barn, cooking the grains, and eating to his heart's content. Their disappointment knew no bounds. Feeling betrayed, the animals confronted Timothy the next morning. They scolded him for deceiving them and causing them to suffer even more during the famine. In their anger, they threw him down the stairs and denied him access to the barn ever again, leaving him hungry for double the days he had deceived them. Timothy learned a valuable lesson that day. He realized the importance of using wisdom for good rather than for personal gain. He felt remorseful for his actions and promised the animals that he would never deceive anyone again. From that day forward, Timothy dedicated himself to helping others and using his wisdom for the benefit of all. The animals were reluctant to trust him ever again, but over time he gained their trust by doing good deeds, and together they worked as a team to find food and survive the famine. And so, Timothy the tortoise became a member of the forest once again, and his story reminding everyone who saw him of the importance of honesty and selflessness. Once upon a time, in a tropical forest filled with chattering animals, there lived a wise tortoise named Timothy. Timothy was known for his wisdom, cleverness, and his sometimes mischievous nature. One sunny day, the forest animals gathered for a special competition organized by a monkey named Milo. For there was only one elixir in the entire forest that could make its drinker live a very long life, and whomever wins would have it. The competition was all about drinking a super spicy hot ghost pepper without gasping for air. All the animals lined up, ready to take on the challenge. There were elephants, rabbits, squirrels, birds, and even a brave lion. But everyone knew the hot pepper was no ordinary treat. As the competition began, one by one, the animals took a sip of the fiery pepper. They couldn't handle the intense spiciness and started gasping for air, their eyes watering and noses turning red. It seemed impossible to finish the pepper without gasping. But Timothy, being the wise tortoise that he was, had a clever plan. Instead of drinking the pepper in a rush, he decided to sing a poem. As Timothy began his melodious tune, the audience was captivated. His voice was soft and soothing, and his words flowed like a gentle river. He sang,
"Everybody sing a march. Ooda, ooda, ooh. I learned this wisdom from my past. Ooda, ooda, ooh. Follow not to be the last. Ooda, ooda, ooh. You don't have to drink so fast. Ooda, ooda, ooh. If you do, you will win the task. Ooda, ooda, ooh."
As he sang, Timothy took tiny unnoticeable gasps between the lines of his poem. He cleverly hid his gasps in the rhythm and melody, fooling everyone into thinking he was just singing. The audience was enchanted by his performance and didn't notice his secret strategy. As the poem reached its climax, Timothy sang the final line, "In a forest so far, we all shall soar."
Hi.
With a triumphant smile, he finished the spicy hot pepper drink, never once gasping for air. The crowd erupted into applause, amazed by Timothy's cleverness. Milo, the monkey, declared Timothy the winner of the competition and was given the only remaining elixir of life. The wise tortoise had outsmarted all the other animals with his unique strategy. From that day on, Timothy was celebrated as the wisest and most clever creature in the forest. And so, the tale of Timothy, the wise tortoise who won the hot pepper drinking competition, spread throughout the forest. The animals learned that sometimes, it's not just strength or speed that wins the day, but cleverness and thinking outside the box. Timothy finally succeeded in inspiring everyone with his wisdom and cleverness, making the forest a better place for all. And that, my little friends, is the reason why most tortoises live a very long life.
Once upon a time, in an ancient green forest, lived a sprightly hare named Dee Dee and a patient tortoise named Tim. Didi was always full of energy, zipping through the woods, while Tim was slow but persistent, taking one step at a time. One day, all the forest animals decided to host an annual race. The challenge was to cross the treacherous Great Mountain and reach the magical meadow on the other side. Didi, with all his swiftness, was the favorite to win. Tim, with his slow pace, was doubted by everyone, including himself. The race started, and like a flash of lightning, Didi dashed ahead. Tim, however, began his journey at his own steady pace. Midway, Didi was so far ahead that he decided to rest for a while. He looked back, saw no sign of Tim, and fell into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, Tim reached the foot of the Great Mountain. It was a steep, rocky, and dangerous climb. Tim looked at the towering mountain and, for a moment, despaired. He almost thought of giving up, but then he remembered his favorite saying, "Slow and steady wins the race." With courage in his heart and firm determination in his mind, Tim began his ascent. Each step was a struggle, but he kept going. He slipped, stumbled, but never stopped. He pushed himself beyond his limits, never losing hope. As the sun was setting, Didi woke up and saw the top of the Great Mountain. He was shocked to see a small figure nearing the peak. It was Tim. Didi raced towards the mountain, but it was too late. Tim had already started his descent. With renewed vigor, Tim, feeling proud of his accomplishment, raced towards the magical meadow. The animals were astounded when they saw Tim emerging as the winner. There was a thunderous applause. Even Didi clapped for Tim, realizing the importance of persistence and determination. From that day on, everyone in the forest knew that it wasn't just about being the fastest, it was about being persistent, even when the challenge seemed insurmountable, and Tim, the tortoise, became a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring everyone with his remarkable victory. And so the story goes, slow and steady wins the race.